Howdy, carnivores. Hey, Big T here. Hey, today I'm excited to announce that we are launching a new series. Really, it's going to be a live show. It's going to be a collaboration with the amazing Limitless Lindy. And if you don't know her story, be prepared to be blown away. It is absolutely incredible. I think her highest weight was around 771 pounds. I think she's currently 19 months in, and she's at 295 pounds. Truly inspiring, amazing story of just the life-changing power the proper human diet has, the carnivore diet, and how it can just transform your life. And so this is an introductory video to get you accustomed with Limitless Lindy and her story. And I'm going to tell my story on here as well. And this is going to be a series about people that were in our situation. Me and Lindy have talked, and when I was stuck in a chair and in trouble there, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to climb my way out of the over 700-pound hole I dug myself in. I was looking for answers. I was looking at keto. I was looking at carnivore, the lion diet, snake diet, all those things, and kind of digging through things. And as much faith as I knew that I was on the right track with keto and carnivore type of diets, it seemed to be the answer. And I was getting mixed results with keto. And I had faith in carnivore, but I really didn't feel represented as much. And I mean, that might seem silly, but I just didn't see a success story of somebody that had climbed out of, a 700-pound deficit that they'd gotten into and been successful with it. And there's just not a lot of those out there. And I was looking to be inspired. I was looking for hope. I was looking for some direction and something to believe in and get me fired up, and there's so many great people in the carnivore community and so many amazing stories. It's incredible. But I didn't see anybody quite that big. And so, that old addict brain, the sugar addict brain fog will still let you make excuses and say, well, yeah, but they were only 500 pounds, or they're only 550 pounds, you're 700 and, whatever pounds, and you start to feel like maybe you can't do it, like maybe that you're just a little too far gone. And I found out Lindy felt the same way, and so we wanted to do this and, just to kind of represent where we were at and show people that it doesn't matter. You're not too far gone. You can climb out of this hole. So, now it was funny. She started a channel about the same time I did, and she didn't know about me and I didn't know about her. And we both started a channel because of Bill Knott, and we felt like we wanted to show him where we had come from, and that it's very, very possible, and it's absolutely healing and life-changing. And we wanted to make sure that he knew what we couldn't find when we were starting, And so that's what this series is going to be about. And today we're going to introduce you to Lindy, if you haven't seen her yet or heard her story. And I'm going to tell my story as well, in case you haven't heard it already. And in that way, this will be kind of a starting point that everybody can kind of understand what the series is going to be about. And then we're going to go over our personal experiences. And as 700 plus pound, the series is going to be called 700 plus carnivore diet, 700 plus and counting carnivore diet transformations. And we have so many topics that we want to go over, but we're going to start doing a weekly live stream after this, and where we will talk about kind of our unique experiences and kind of struggles, and how we got to such a large deficit, how we dug such a deep hole for ourselves, and what we think were the catalysts for getting us there, and the real breakthroughs that we found with carnivore when nothing else worked. And so, and then so after this, it'll be on Saturdays or Sundays. We haven't quite figured it out yet, but we will let you guys know. But we'll be launching a live once a week, and we'll be taking questions, and we'll be trying to get some guests in there as well that are kind of in that 700-pound extreme category there, and we're just going to try to reach people, kind of fill a gap that may have not been totally touched on in the carnivore community yet. And so that's what this series is going to be all about. And without further ado, here's Lindy.
Hi, my name is Lindy, and a little about myself. I'm 52 years old. I'm married with two beautiful daughters, 32 and 20 years old. I've been overweight pretty much all my life. I come from an Italian family, and honestly, all the family are pretty overweight. We loved our food. We celebrated lots. You eat when you're happy, when you're sad. It was always a very important part of our life. So I was always pretty on the bigger side, and it seemed pretty normal at the time. So moving on, in my 20s, I did feel it was time to start to do something about my weight. So I tried a variety of diets, the low carb. I did the Chris Powell weight loss, and Michelle Bridges diet shakes, you name it, Weight Watchers. I tried them all, and I couldn't lose any weight. I'd lose a little bit to start, and it was just a yo-yoing diet. I then opted to have a lap band surgery, and I failed on that too. I lost a little bit of weight initially, and you sort of learn all the tricks how to dodge that. And the bad foods, the processed foods, are the easy things to get down. Anything else was a bit difficult. So yeah, that was a bit of a struggle as well. Anyway, when I was 30, my life changed. My mother was diagnosed with cancer. She was 50 years old. The same time my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and for 7 years I was primary carer for both. And it was a very, very difficult time of my life, running to and from doctors for them, and my health, my self-care was just put on the back burner. I did everything to help support them. When I lost my mum, my daughter suddenly became, she moved out. She was Miss Independent then, moved out, and suddenly I was alone. I had my husband and my youngest daughter were very settled and independent and good, but I had nobody to care for, and I didn't know who I was. I felt very lost, and I just fell into a deep depression. And I turned to even more comfort food to try and deal with that, because it's the only thing I could do to make me feel better. And I hated the eating. I knew it was the wrong thing to do, but I became numb to it, I guess, and I just ate. And long story short, I suppose it's pretty long anyway, on my 50th birthday, I think I weighed in I was definitely well over 750 pounds, and my life was pretty much over. I had one foot in the grave. I was pre-diabetic. I felt terrible. I looked terrible. I don't know how I looked, because I didn't look in the mirror. I was numb to how I looked. I was numb to how I felt. I was just existing, and just hoping every day I would wake up and just think, I'm here again. I was kind of hoping that I wouldn't wake up one day. That's how bad I felt. And eventually on my 50th birthday, that was the time my mum was diagnosed with cancer. And I thought, well, that's me now. And I have two beautiful daughters who want their mum, and I want to be here for my daughters. I need to make a change. So my sister was quite overweight, and she went on the keto diet and lost a lot of weight. And she suggested, give it a go. It might work for you. So she introduced me to Dr. Ken Berry, and I watched a whole lot of his videos, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. So I did a bit of keto, and I struggled with the macros and measuring your food and all that. That just did my head in. I tried as hard as I could. I would take photos of my meals, and I'd send them to my sister, and she was like, oh, good on you, Lindy. But geez, I really struggled with it. And then all the temptations, keto lasagna, keto cheesecake, all these things, and just all that comfort food made to look healthy. But, I would think, keto lasagna, I can have a double portion because it's healthy. It's keto. So, it didn't fix the issues that I had, the comfort food eating and all that. So followed Dr. Berry. He transitioned to carnivore, and so did I. And the rest is history. I haven't looked back. It's been a game changer.
I'm Todd Bachnes, and I am 40 years old. I was, I think I broke 200 pounds when I was somewhere around 5-6 years old. I broke, 300 pounds, I think, when I was around 8 or 9. I was over 500 pounds when I was 11, and I finally hit 600 pounds when I was 14, and I was just growing. I think most of that we were very we didn't have much money. We were very strapped just to survive. We were living on pretty modest means. That meant box macaroni and cheese and box pastas and cheap lunch meat and bread and egg sandwiches and hot dogs and just all the super processed, hyper palatable, just carbohydrate loaded, no nutrition food, and then we'd even only usually eat dinner. Sometimes we'd eat lunch and dinner, but we wouldn't eat in the morning. So our food in the morning to get going was always like soda, because you got to have some kind of energy in the morning. But we weren't a breakfast family. We'd just get up and go to work, and so we just drank tons of soda. And, of course, my parents didn't know any different, So that's, I think, how I put on most of the weight. When I was basically probably right around between 12 and 14, that's when I first started dieting. When I started getting out working and I was having a hard time, I was like, man, I got to do something about this, And so, we've seen doctors and dietitians, and it was always about the food pyramid, the standard American diet food pyramid, and calorie restriction diets. And so I would start doing that, and I would just get frustrated. And so I'd always go on a starvation diet. I would always do something extreme, and I would just stop eating because it was easier. And now I know, of course, that at least when you're fasting, you're in fasted ketosis, and that's why it was always easier. It was eating the standard American portion controlled diets was just keeping you on the insulin roller coaster, and it was harder and less successful. Or at least if I just stop eating, go on a starvation diet, at least I'd be in ketosis and it would work, And so I'd always go on these starvation diets. But even doing that, the cravings were better when I was on, in a fasted state, but they never went away. They're still there. Especially the soda. I always wanted soda. It was crazy. And so that went on many times, and that was, that was started me on, 4 different occasions in my life where I'd lost 200 and even in 2 occasions, really 300 pounds, just not eating. And for months, between 14, 17 months at a time, pretty much wouldn't eat. And I mean, I would eat some, but it would be like every 3 days. I'd have like 800 to 1,000 calories every 3 days. And then I'd go back into a fast. And I'd just do that for 17 months and work hard. And it would always work to a point. I'd lose weight, but I would get weak too because I wasn't putting any electrolytes in. I wasn't putting any protein in. I wasn't putting any, amino acids in. So I'd start eating away at muscle as fast as it was eating away at fat. I'd get weak. And then now I know, I didn't know at the time, but it would always come to a crux where I'd be completely depleted on electrolytes. So I was getting tunnel vision, bloody noses, lightheaded, dizzy, vertigo, weak. Things were breaking, like I tore a rotator cuff. I ended up with a knee surgery once because my knee kind of blew up on me. Just those things. And it was just because my body was eating away itself. But anyways, I did that. When I was 18, things got a little worse because I was working on a job site and I breathed in a bunch of spray and insulation Corbon stuff had gotten into my lungs. And that winter, I got a terrible case of pneumonia that was really bad, landed me in the ICU, ended up doing a bunch of tests on my lungs and stuff. And they diagnosed me with reactive airway disease. It's something that basically it's like an asthma that's brought on by being exposed to chemicals, like pool guys that deal with a lot of chlorine and pool chemicals that clean pools. They get it a lot. And so I had this lung issue called reactive airway disease. And now my lungs, like I just couldn't breathe all the time. I'd have like asthma attacks. My lungs would close off. And every winter I'd get pneumonia or bronchitis. And that was just the new normal. And my oxygen when I was 18 was down to 88% saturation. And that was all the better it would ever get. And so that was kind of what even deteriorated things more. And I ended up working, I think I was about 27 or 28. And I'd worked for basically the time I was like 12 or 13 till I was about 27 or 28 in the field. And then I got pulled into the office. Now I was way more sedentary and sitting a lot. So that went on, and I went on more and more starvation diets and fall off the wagon and gain it back. And that happened till basically 2016. I got put in the ICU again because my oxygen was down in the 70s and had bronchitis for the umpteenth millionth time. And they had to put me in the ICU because I required 12 liters of oxygen to get my lungs, get back to 90% saturation. And I just got out of the ICU that time. And there's a lot of other things going on in my life at that time. My brother had gotten really sick and had a big heart attack. And my dad got diagnosed with leukemia, and he was kind of on his last few days or months, And so I knew I needed to make a change. So when I got out, I decided to eliminate I wasn't going to drink any calories anymore, because at the time I was drinking iced coffees in the morning and sodas and energy drinks in the afternoon. And so I just decided I knew that on the days that I had the least amount of soda and sugary drinks and things, that was the days that my lungs were better. They weren't great, but they weren't having as many problems. So I eliminated sugary drinks from my diet, and I was able to, I still was drinking soda, but I made a diet soda, and so I was drinking like, those liquid ice, juicy carbonated diet juice drinks and Diet Coke and whatever. And I kept that off for a year. So I decided to go on another diet, but I was like, this time I'm not going to go on the starvation thing. I'm going to really stick to the diet as long as it takes. I'm just not going to quit on it no matter what it takes. I just got to get through this thing. And so I didn't know where to start. I knew I wasn't going back to a dietitian or a doctor because none of those had ever worked. And at the time, my brother was doing a weightlifter's diet, which is high protein, low fat, moderate carbohydrate. And so I did that for the next 14 months. And it was the worst I'd ever felt, most depressed I'd ever felt, most tired I ever felt. it was the worst diet I'd ever been on. And it basically looked like egg whites and turkey sausage for breakfast every morning. And I'd have dry chicken breasts with brown rice every night with a side of protein powder and plain Greek low fat yogurt, and that's what I ate for 14 months every day. And I was about to lose my mind after 14 months. After 14 months, I lost 37 pounds. I never slept good. I never woke up with energy. I never felt good. The depression and anxiety was mind-numbingly just crippling, and it was just miserable. And so after 14 months, I knew I was going to fall off the wagon. I could not eat another dry piece of chicken or I was just going to lose my mind. It was unbearable. And so I could feel that I was about to fail yet again. And so I looked up and I decided, during that diet, I couldn't use barbecue sauce on the chicken or, poultry rubs that were full of sugar. And I couldn't put any of that stuff on the chicken. So it was just dry, skinless, terrible chicken. So I was like, I got to figure out a way to cook this chicken better. And I looked up online and it brought up sous vide cooking, which is where you cook proteins in a vacuum sealed bag and you cook them in a water bath. And the idea is that cooking protein in a vacuum will keep the moisture from evaporating. So it'll keep it juicy. Plus you won't overcook it at all. And it'll just melt all the white tissue and the hardened tissue and the protein to make it juicy and soft and tender and all those things. So I ordered up a sous vide machine, and in anticipation of it showing up, I was watching this channel on YouTube called Sous Vide Everything to understand how to use it. And these guys, they had a really successful channel on YouTube, but they were doing it because they were making these wonderful videos of them cooking ribeyes, and they'd sous vide ribeyes, and then they would sear them in a pan with butter and herbs, And so I was watching this after eating dried, bland, tasteless chicken, and my mouth was watering watching these videos. I was just sitting there looking at these ribeyes, and I was like, I just want to try one before I go back to chicken. I just want to try one of those ribeyes just one time because I'd seen so many of those videos. So my sous vide machine was coming that day, and I went to the store, and this is, how you're an addict. I told myself I was going to have one ribeye before I went on to chicken, but I came home with 4 ribeyes. So I knew that I was already lying to myself, but I did kind of the macros on it. And I was like, if I don't eat 2 meals a day and I just have 1 ribeye a day seared in butter and I get rid of those carbohydrates, yes, I'm eating more fat than I should be by a lot, but at least the calories are similar. If I just do 1 ribeye seared in butter rather than those 2 meals, at least the overall calories are pretty much the same. So I talked myself, kind of reasoned myself that I could have those ribeyes, and I was just going to eat those 4 ribeyes. And so when I ate that ribeye that first day, it was the first time in 14 months that I was happy, like my brain fog lifted, the anxiety and depression and way, it was 50% better, and I had energy and I felt good, and I even slept good that night. And I was like, at the time I just thought, well, this is clearly something mental, it was just mentally, I was happy to have a break, because it couldn't be the food. It just was a mental cheat day type break type thing. So, but I had 3 more ribeyes to go. So I ate those for the next 3 days, and every day I felt better and I had more energy, and mentally I felt better, and I just felt light and energetic. And the biggest thing was I felt like enthusiastic about the day instead of dreading the day. From the moment I woke up, I was happy to see what happened. I was in a good mood. I was happy to talk to people. It just felt good. And at the end of that 4 days, I was peeing like a racehorse. I didn't know why, but all of a sudden I was peeing a bunch. And at the end of that 4 days, I'd lost 13 pounds, and I was feeling good and I felt stronger. And I was like, what is going on? I had 14 months of absolute misery. I'd lost 37 pounds. And now in 4 days of basically compared to what I would just went through, total bliss, I lost 13 pounds. I'm like, what is happening? This doesn't make sense. This is everything my doctor said never to eat. This is everything that's supposed to kill me. I was supposed to just go to the depths of hell after eating 4 days of ribeyes and butter, like what is happening? So I went and Googled it. I'm like, why do I feel amazing eating ribeyes and butter? And it brought up Dr. Darren Schmidt in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he was talking about keto and candidus gut bacteria, basically only burning, only to being able to only make energy out of glycogen and feeding this candidus bacteria and all that. And so it put me down the keto road. And had I stayed with just the ribeyes and butter, I would have been great. But I went off on the keto tangent and I got into all the processed keto foods like the fathead doughs and the erythritols and the dragon fruit or monk fruit sweetener and all the xylitols and all the sugars and all the keto muffins and keto fat bombs and bulletproof coffees and all this stuff. And that kind of derailed, I was doing better and I was feeling better. But I never got rid of the carb cravings. And it was too close to my old diet because now I'm making processed keto versions of my old standard American diet. And I'm still eating too many times a day. And half the time I don't know how to read the labels, and I'm not even seeing that some of these have seed oil. I didn't even know about I was trying to wrap my head around the seed oils, but unless you have a lot of time to delegate to reading all the boxes and going through the grocery store and finding like the needle in the haystack to find that one food that doesn't have like what it was that stuff's called aspartame and seed oils in it. Like most of the even so-called healthy keto food all have the wrong stuff in it, and so it's really, really hard to navigate all those pitfalls while eating, loose processed keto foods, so, and it was keeping all those cravings alive. So I just kept going up and down. And so basically I had two long runs at keto where I fell off of both of them. I lost weight. I gained it back. I lost weight. I gained it back. And finally on the third time, I was reading a book by Dr. Jason Fung. I think it was called The Diabetes Code. And it was talking about, your fasted insulin set point and how your fasted insulin levels basically are like the thermostat for your body mass size. And that one of the real keys to getting your body, how everybody hits a plateau. And one of the real keys to breaking through a plateau is to get your fasted insulin levels down. And unfortunately, the only real way to keep your fasted insulin levels down is to keep your insulin fasted for long, long periods of time, as much as possible, intermittent fasting, OMAD. And I was already doing OMAD at this point, but I did something stupid, kind of typical of me doing something drastic with like the starvation diets and stuff. I decided I was going to do a 40-day water fast. And so I jumped into that with both feet. And I'm like, I'm just doing this. And if I get to 40 days and I ain't dead, I'm going for 80, is what I was thinking. And because I'd read I forget that gentleman's name, but he had lost like 330 pounds for fasting for 420 something days. This was clear back in like the 50s or 60s, but he fasted for like 450 days, just drank water for 420 something or 50 something days. Can't remember, but he lost like 330 pounds. But what was interesting is he was in a state of autophagy so much that he didn't have any loose skin. His body was always in autophagy, and it ate his skin as he lost all this huge amount of weight. So I was real curious about that. So I was going for a 40-day water fast, and I made it to day 21. But what happened was I was drinking so much water and I wasn't taking any electrolytes that I had like flushed all the potassium out of me, and it got real, real low. And in fact, it got so low that it compromised, I guess, my blood plasma, which I didn't even know was a thing. But if you get your potassium so low, your blood plasma doesn't hold red blood cell platelets anymore. So my red blood cell count tanked. And all of a sudden I was having asthma attacks for no reason. I'd just be sitting there and I'd have an asthma attack and it felt like my lungs were collapsing. And it was because I didn't have near as many red blood cells anymore, so they weren't carrying the oxygen. So I had to go and get a bunch of potassium and get my potassium levels up. And while I was waiting for my red blood cell count to go up, my immune system was compromised because my red blood cells were tanked. And of course, I caught COVID right then because my immune system was down, and I just couldn't fight it off, and I caught it, and it got really, really bad, and I got a terrible, terrible pneumonia, and I had terrible fever, and that pneumonia was tearing up my lungs, and I was contemplating on going into the hospital. And this was just my own personal view. It doesn't mean anything, and it's teach their own. But at the time, I didn't really agree with the hospital's procedure with the remdesivir treatment because from what I had heard and read about it, it was actually waterlogging people's lungs, and it just so happened to be at that time. A friend of mine had caught it a week earlier, and he was just a few months younger than me and way healthier than me, and I got it real bad and got it in the lungs, and he went into the hospital, and they gave him the remdesivir, and within about, I think it was like 17 hours after they gave him the remdesivir, he passed away. And so I was just, in my gut, I just was certain that if I went in the hospital, I wasn't going to come out of there, so I decided to fight it at home. And I did ivermectin and nebulizers and some naturopath treatments at home. And it was brutal, and I did survive it, obviously, but I tore up my lungs real bad, and I ended up with congestive heart failure after that. And I started putting fluid on over that next 3 months. I ended up putting like 84 pounds of fluid on, or 3 weeks. It was only 3 weeks, and I put 84 pounds of fluid on. And then I spent the next 6 months doing all these naturopath remedies, taking celery. I was drinking bottles of celery juice because it was supposed to help get the extra fluid off you, and it was supposed to clean out your lymphatic system and do all this stuff. And so I was doing everything, but whatever had happened when I had ended up scarring up my lungs, I got terrible sleep apnea, which I think looking back, I had it my whole life, but it was milder. But now I had it terrible, and I couldn't breathe. And every time I'd try to sleep, at this point, I was sleeping in a recliner in my living room, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand. I couldn't do anything. And I was well over, between 600 and 700 pounds. I didn't even know at that time for sure, but I was huge. And I was stuck in this chair, and every time I'd doze off and fall asleep, I'd wake up gasping for air, wasn't breathing. This went on for about 6 months, and I was being careful how much fluid I drank, and I was trying to get all this fluid off me, and it was kind of working and it kind of wasn't. But I was just packed with fluid. And then one day I fell asleep, and I'd woke up, same thing, gasping for air, but this time it was different. Something bad had happened. I still don't know what it was, but I had such a screaming headache, and I had a pulse ox sensor you'd put on your finger and see what your pulse and your oxygen was. And that time my oxygen was down in the 60s. It had tanked, and I was confused. I didn't know where I was. I couldn't recall words. I thought I had a stroke or something. I didn't know what happened. And usually, I was used to waking up a little confused from not breathing, but this time, usually within 15 minutes, the world had righted itself. I'd sit there and breathe deep and slow. And after 15 minutes, the oxygen headache would go away, and I would get my bearings about me. But this time, it just didn't do that. It was like, it took me like 6 hours just to kind of get my bearings a little bit, and I still had the headache, and something real dramatic must have gone on that night. I don't know what it was, and I was just gray and pale, and I looked like I wasn't going to live another 2 days, the way I looked and the way I felt. And so I had to call an ambulance again. And that's always fun, getting me in an ambulance. I hated it so bad. And they brought a crew of firefighters and got me up in the ambulance and took me to the hospital. And I was in there for 11 days. And yeah, they said that that, I just stopped breathing and I was out of air for so long that it really damaged my lungs and my heart. And I had a ton of fluid on me. So they just put me on Lasix IV drips and they got, I think, 68 pounds of fluid off me in that 11 days. And I felt quite a bit better. And then I went home and they sent me home with oxygen. That did help. They set me up with a sleep study, but it was 3 months down the road. But they sent me home with oxygen at least. And I was taking that. And they sent me home with fluid pills. And I started taking that, which was the beginning of some good things because that at least was bringing my mind back to where I could focus on taking another stab at keto at the time. And so I was fighting that, going back and forth. And I'd been in this chair now, almost 2 years at this point, going through all that. And so I decided to take another shot at keto. But this time I'd watched enough videos to know to do real strict keto, basically carnivore plus cruciferous vegetables, olive oil, and some dairy, but maybe the dairy would not be a great idea, but I could play with it, So that was September 28th. I started September 29th of 2022. September 28th of 2022 was the last non-keto meal I had. And I started with taco salads. So I would eat just taco, it was beef. I'd eat a pound of beef and I'd eat a spring mix, which was, kale, chard, arugula, and spinach. And I had a little bit of sour cream, a little bit of cheese, some black olives, and I think some hot sauce. And that's what I was eating. And I did that for a week. And I tested my ketone levels with a blood meter. And I wasn't even considering ketosis yet after a week. So I was like, I was close. I was almost there, but I wasn't there yet. And so I was 0.08 and I guess 1 to 5 on that meter was considered in ketosis and I was just under. So I started cutting down the cheese. I cut down the sour cream and the cheese in half. I think I was doing 6 ounces. I was doing OMAD at the time, so I was eating a pretty big salad because I was only eating once a day. And so I was eating like 6 or 8 ounces of cheese, and I cut that in half and checked the next week, and I was still at 0.8. And so finally I got rid of the cheese, and I still at 0.8. And so then I got rid of the next I think I got rid of the seasoning and the meat. I don't know, but over the period of like 4 weeks, I got rid of the seasoning and the meat, the cheese, and I added eggs because I needed a texture change. And so I replaced eggs with the cheese because at least it was a texture thing. And I did that for like a month and I got to 1. I was on 1. So I had gotten that to the very lowest bar of ketosis after a month. And I don't know why it was taking so long, why it was so hard for me, but it was. And at this point, I realized I was still drinking, those diet drinks, and it wasn't doing me any good. So I decided to cut out iced tea, coffee, and the diet sodas. And that was making me feel like I was going to fail because without those, the carb cravings were so terrible bad. And it was so miserable. I had to do something. And I follow a guy on YouTube at the time that was the main keto guy, which is Dr. Berg, Eric Berg, and I love the guy. And I was watching his stuff, and he talked about if you have a soda addiction, to make like a sparkling lemonade, you get this volcanic organic lemon juice. You put it in bubbly, or you put it in sparkling mineral water. Add a little bit of stevia. And then maybe add he's got some lemon flavored electrolyte powder. And so that's what I was making. And I was drinking like a gallon of that a day because, I was such an addict on the soda. That was the biggest thing I was addicted to. But I did that for 5 weeks and it was the craziest thing. And during that time, I had eliminated everything out of my taco salad. And now it was just meat and lettuce. And the lettuce was driving me nuts because I wasn't able to go shopping, so I was ordering it in from Instacart. And lettuce only lasts like 3 days and then it turns brown and slimy. So it was making me order food. You can't freeze lettuce like you can freeze meat. And so I kept getting this lettuce and I kept throwing all this slimy lettuce away and I was wasting money on this lettuce and it was annoying and I didn't like it anyways. And I'm like, the only difference between me and carnivore right now is this lettuce that I don't like and it's going bad. So I just kicked the lettuce and and so I was basically eating carnivore, but I was still drinking keto because I was drinking the lemon juice. And I got to basically it was coming up on January 1st. And I just noticed I wasn't craving the lemon juice anymore and my soda cravings were gone. In fact, all carb cravings seemed to have been gone. And so I started drinking water and electrolytes. And so I did that for a few days and I wasn't craving soda anymore. And I was like, wow, something really did click there. Something changed. And so the last thing that I had that wasn't on the BBB&E thing that was in my diet, the last thing was black pepper. I was still having black pepper. And so on January 1st, I cut the black pepper out of my diet and I was officially full carnivore on January 1st. And man, I got to tell you, it's been just a breeze since then. Like the energy levels through the roof. I got off oxygen. The weight was coming off. My first month on full carnivore, I was finally able to weigh myself. I'd been trying that whole time because I was on ketovore basically for 3 months, going through all these different changes, whittling down the taco salad, doing the lemon juice stuff. And I finally, after 1 month on carnivore and 3 months on ketovore, I was able to finally stand on the scale. I couldn't get both my legs on the scale because I had bad lymphedema. My calves were 35 inches in diameter. So my legs are so far apart, I couldn't fit them both on the scale. They wouldn't touch. But anyhow, finally, after 3 months of ketovore and 1 month of carnivore, I was able to stand on the scale. And it was 647 pounds is where that was after I'd lost enough weight to see it. And I just kept going. And for the next 5 months, I added my next 5 months average of weight loss to my beginning 4 months. And I estimated that 715 as my starting point. And I haven't looked back since. And 3 days ago was my 1 year keto / carnivore anniversary. And currently I'm down to, what was I this morning? I was 468 this morning, 468 this morning. So this has been crazy. I think at this rate in February, I will be half my size. I've lost half my body weight by February, I think. And off all the medication, off all the food pills, off the Advair and lung medication. They were always prescribing me depression, anxiety medication, but I didn't take it because I'd seen other people take it and they look like walking zombies. And so I just never messed with it. But I don't take a single medication. I'm off the oxygen. Oh, my oxygen now, like I said, since I was 18 years old was 88%. It's 96% with no oxygen now and no medication. It's amazing. I have never breathed this good in my life. I don't know that reactive airway disease is gone, but I haven't had an asthma attack or felt that tightness in my chest since I've been doing this. So I think it's gone, but the biggest thing is, I have no carb cravings at all. There's every one of those starvation diets or grazing diets or standard American diets or calorie restrictive diets. Every one of those was just like a monkey on your back where every day you're like, this is not sustainable. What day am I going to fall off the rails? What day is this going to go south? Definitely that high protein, low fat diet that I was on. That was the worst diet I'd ever been on in my life. But now I know why. Now I know why looking back. I wasn't getting any fat. All right. And I was eating just enough carbohydrates every day to keep me out of ketosis. So I couldn't get into ketosis. I couldn't make any energy out of fat. My brain needed the fat something fierce. And I think that's why when I had just that one ribeye, I think that made such a big difference because for 14 months, I was like on the edge of being in ketosis. I was so close because I was eating a lot of protein. I just needed to bump the fat up and just completely get rid of the carbs, which I accidentally did when I had that first ribeye. And I think that's what did it all. And had I not done that, had somebody came to me just like back in the day, Atkins was an option. I wouldn't have taken Atkins because I thought it was such a clearly silly diet, that I wouldn't have tried it. But because I felt the effects for myself when I had that ribeye, I couldn't deny what had actually happened to me. I felt it myself, and that's what kicked it all off for me. So that's where we're at now. So yeah, I think we have very similar stories in that aspect. How fast? I mean, can you believe how fast it actually worked for you?
Oh, I still don't believe it. 3rd of January 2021 is when I first committed to carnivore strictly. And like I was at the 750 plus pound mark. And as of this morning, I'm down to 298 pounds.
That is amazing. I'm going to be so excited when I can join the 200 club with you. That's going to be amazing. But that had to have blown your mind when you hit the 200 mark.
Yeah, I had a party last week. I did go up a little bit, but now I'm down again this morning. So, yeah, it's still hard to believe. I still mentally think of myself as that bit large person. And like my brain hasn't caught up yet. It's a really weird feeling, but
do you still do things like when you go through a doorway, do you still turn sideways and stuff?
Oh God, yeah. We go out, or I check the seats, make sure I'm going to fit in the seats, or make sure it's sturdy enough to hold my weight. I always second guess myself, even just going for a walk and you have to step up over the curb. I always grab my husband's arm just in case I have a fall because I couldn't get up. I mean,
right.
Just little things that people take for granted, like when you can just walk around normally. They're things that you worry about being that large. Just that losing your balance and falling over. My God, what happens if you fall over? How the hell do you get up? I mean,
I know that I remember distinctively one night I was going to the bathroom and I woke up. This was actually before I was even at my worst. This was when I was still going through keto and stuff, but I was probably 650 somewhere in there. And I remember I got up and I had slipped over a cord that was on the ground and I went down and I fell and put one knee in my bed because I was so close to my bed and my box springs blew up. One of my knee hit it. My box springs just busted. And I ended up on the floor and I was sitting I was sitting straight up on the floor. But it took me like 45 minutes to get up. And I really didn't know if I was going to get up or not because it was so painful to get to my knees because all that weight on that swelling on my knees was just killing me. And it was everything I could do for 45 minutes to get up. And I thought, oh my God, I can never do that again because I don't know if I'll ever get up again. And what's somebody going to do? What is your family going to do to get you off? Like, you're going to have to call the fire department if you can't get up. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous. It was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I had a few falls in the house as well. I actually knocked my teeth out.
Oh.
The falls during COVID. So obviously all the dentists were closed. And so I had these 4 teeth waving at people because I couldn't do anything about them. They hadn't knocked out completely, but they were very loose. And
oh my gosh.
It's scary. And I couldn't get up either. I had to sort of either, pull myself to a chair and then try and get myself. But when your legs are so inflamed and full of water, that pain, like you can't get on your knees.
No.
And so you have to try and prop yourself up on the chair without putting your knees down because the pain was just unbearable.
Yeah.
I remember lying in bed, and even if my husband suddenly just touched my legs with his foot or something, that pain would be shocking, and I don't have that anymore. That's all gone now, which is awesome. And I still think I still do have the lymphedema. It's always going to be there, I'm sure. And, it's not inflamed or, I don't have that painful to touch anymore. That's all gone. So, yeah.
Did you have any neuropathy when that was? So I had a weird thing that I didn't even understood that I had. Like I said, my lymphedema came on really quick because I basically got it when my lungs and heart got damaged from COVID. All the water came on kind of at once. I had a little swelling for sure before then, but nothing like what happened after COVID. That in that first 3 weeks, I really thought that was going to be the end right there because I didn't think you could gain that much fluid that fast, and I clearly something terrible was wrong. But uh, when that happened, I didn't even realize it, but I couldn't feel my feet and toes anymore. Like they had no, you could hit them with a hammer, and I couldn't feel my toes; they were numb. But then when all the fluids started coming off after I was on carnivore, and I started losing all that fluid, I started getting feeling back in them, but everything was on fire. It felt like if I touched my feet to the floor, it felt like I had them in a hot skillet or something.
Yeah, I did have really bad hot flushes. I call them hot flushes, as I was detoxing, I guess. And yeah, the neuropathy in my left foot, I couldn't feel my toes at all. And the bottom of my foot, it just felt like pins and needles all the time. I was pre-diabetic when I first started carnivore. That was another reason that pushed me to go eat this way. So I don't know whether it was because I was pre-diabetic or whether it was lymphedema. I never even thought of that. But it's only been probably in the last 4 months that I've actually got feeling back in those toes.
Oh, so, wow. And it came back, and I bet now you can move your toes a little bit more independently.
It feels normal. My foot feels normal. But yeah, it was literally just the left foot that was almost like it was pins and needles all the time, asleep, and just felt numb. Even in bed, I couldn't even feel the sheets on my foot, whereas the other one was free. Weird feeling.
And how I noticed it was because it's weird. You don't really necessarily notice it when you're losing it in your feet. But where I started noticing it was when I'd be in the shower and I was spraying my legs. I was like, why am I not hitting my legs? And I'd look down, the water's hitting my legs and I'm not feeling it at all. I couldn't feel the water spraying my legs or my feet. And I was like, uh-oh, that's not good. And then I realized that I had lost mobility in my toes. Like I could move my toes all together up and down, but I couldn't like move them individually and I couldn't feel them. But now that all came back. It literally only happened in probably the last 5 or 6 weeks. It was one of the last things that came back, but my feet finally came back, So, yeah, it's amazing. That way,
you just go numb, don't you, to how you feel. You don't look in the mirror. You don't want to know how big you are. You know you're big, but it's like you just turn your head off. You don't see what other people are seeing. You're just existing, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. As like me and you have talked a little bit before, you can go in the bathroom and I could go in the bathroom and shave and comb my hair or I don't have much hair, so I'd shave my head, shave my beard, brush my teeth, wash my face, do all this stuff, clean my ears. I could walk out of the bathroom and I couldn't tell you what my face looked like. I couldn't remember it, and I didn't see my body. I'm standing right in front of a mirror. I couldn't tell you what I looked like, if I looked like I gained weight or lost weight. I did not have a mental picture at all of me at all. And I would go do all that stuff, but it was like, I wouldn't make a conscious. And I almost think that was some kind of mental way of not having to deal with the problem that was staring me in the face. And that's why I don't have hardly any pictures, because when that would really hit me, it would be when my sister or something would come over and say, oh, here's a good picture of us from the Christmas, whatever, and they'd show me the picture and I would see myself and I would say, tear that up, get rid of that. I don't want to see that, delete that. I would hate it, And so I think there's less than 20 pictures that have survived to me its whole life, because my family would take them, and maybe there's more because they're not telling me, but they would tape them and not show them to me, because if they showed them to me, they're going to have to delete them. I would pretty much wrestle them to the ground because I didn't want them to exist, because it would be flat shocker to see the picture, And they were like, what do you mean? Of course, you know what you look like. You are you. You go, you see yourself. And I'm like, I never saw that person. And it was such a shock to your head, because when you think about yourself in your head, you were never that person in your head that was in that mirror. You know,
No.
I was never that person, you know. Hey guys, that's it for today. Sorry for the edits in the video. We actually ended up having a 3-hour conversation, and we were just kind of trying to put together an intro video, and I had to condense it down. So there was a lot of edits in there of us just getting to know each other and things that we'll go in the future, go into in the future here. But I just hope that you're as inspired as I am by Lindy's story, and you're as excited as I am to get to know her better every week. She's an amazing person, and her progress and what she's come through and the success she's had is just unbelievable. Completely transformed her life. Complete inspiration to people like me. Yeah, and I hope you guys will tune in with your questions and be part of the family. So we will see you live next Saturday or Sunday. We'll let you know. Have a good night.